friends! So today we are here to bring you our second recap for the month of July. This is all the rest of the books that we managed to read that month, and there are quite a few, so I guess we should just get started. The first book is actually the book I mentioned I was reading in the last recap video, which I'll link to down below, and it's Invictus by Ryan Grudden, which I absolutely loved. I've said it many times before, but this one was pitched as Doctor Who meets Firefly meets Guardians of the Galaxy, and while I can speak to the first and the last comparison, and it really is a lot like that, I cannot speak to the second, which I think Macky I
Again, we are trying to remedy her Firefly deficiency.
This is a story of a boy named Faraway. He is hell-bent on becoming a time traveler, and he ends up failing the final time travel exam. But he is given an opportunity by someone in the black market, and he ends up becoming captain of his own ship with a bunch of his friends on his crew, and they go back in time and steal lost historical things that no one will miss in order to sell them on the black market. But on one of their missions, they encounter this person, and a lot of things start falling apart, and it's timey-wimey. It's so good. It's very unexpected, and I absolutely enjoyed it. The crew is amazing. It's actually my favorite part of this book. Love these characters so much. Imogen is my favorite, and clearly he's trying to steal it from me. But since I've already read it, and I'm going to talk about it, I just want to say that it's really, really good, you guys. I'm not much of a science fiction reader, but I will make exceptions for books like this one. Okay then.
Yeah, totally gonna read that. Okay, my turn. So this is Choices from Smith Publicity was able to get a copy. A very poignant story of a family who escaped Russia-controlled Hungary, true to life, because she just basically narrates everything that happened to her parents when they plotted their escape. It was post-World War II, and they were able to find their way out. And the war may have ended, but the aftermath of which was still something that you know, people were recovering for at the time. And this is such a good story, and I cried because, you know, they made it.
YA fantasy book called The Library of Fates by Aditi Khorana, and this is the story of a princess named Amrita, and she is promised in an arranged marriage to this tyrannical emperor named Sikander. And a lot of things get messed up, and suddenly Amrita finds herself thrown out of her home with no one for company but an oracle that she has rescued. And together they have to journey in order to help her find a way to save her country and a specific tribe in her country, and for the oracle to get a second chance at her life since she has been imprisoned and held hostage for many years. It starts off a bit clunky, to be honest, and it took me a while to really get into it, but once you get to the journey part of the story, it gets very interesting. I really liked all the cultural references in this one. It's Indian.
I was thinking Indian.
Yeah.
Because I'm reading.
And it's really interesting in that sense. I don't think I would necessarily call it a favorite just because of the way that I personally couldn't connect to any of these characters, but it definitely made for an interesting read, and it's something different, which is always a good thing.
The Hearts We Sold. For those of you who have read and maybe enjoyed my review, I don't know if it's going to be out.
I will link that.
But so it's a funny story. Book comes in the mail, and Alexa goes, "Hey, I think you're gonna like this book, and maybe you should read and review it instead, because it's about, you know, a deal with the devil." And I'm like, "Yeah, give." And so put it on my TBR, grab it. I don't read blurbs, neither does she. Totally reading it. I'm like, my gosh, what amazing lore. It is a world where demons have revealed themselves to the world, and they said, we don't want any part in politics. We don't want to mess with people. We just want to make deals with consenting adults. We'll give them what they want if they give us what we want, which is apparently limbs. Fine. All right. So you've got like that one-legged rock star and that armless supermodel and all of these things, and then going on. And the girl makes the deal, right? I did not read the blurb at the back, nor the front caption, which should have been a dead giveaway. Her heart is no longer hers to give. And so when the YA paranormal romance part kicks in, right? I'm so enamored with the lore. I love the characters. They're so cool. And then suddenly they're like, "Why is there a ship? This is so cool. This is a cool kind of otherworldly demon thing, right?" It's a paranormal YA romance, to my surprise. Plot twist for me. I kind of like it. So, and I'm like shipper trash extraordinaire, right? So at first I'm like, ugh, God, paranormal YA romance. I avoid these things like the plague unless I can make fun of them, which I don't recommend. Don't be a troll. But and I don't but then plot twist at the end, I really did like it. And there was this one line in this book, and I'm just like, the author did it. She wrote this entire book so that they could give that really one, I am ashamed to admit, awesome line that I find is really cool. And so, great lore, great story. If you like paranormal YA romance, give this. It's actually pretty top tier stuff. And who, and see the little tabs here because I had to. I'll end my mini review with this. Who opens a book that says a demon was knitting outside the hospital? I'm like, mine. Sold. This is easily. I want to keep this because experience, right? And I will buy the book too. So I'm sentimental about arcs. So.
I read a book called I Hate Everyone But You by Gabby Dunn and Allison Raskin. And it's about two best friends who are going to college on opposite coasts. So one is on the East Coast and one is on the West Coast, and it is told through text messages and emails as the two girls recount their experiences and keep up with each other's lives. Okay. I liked the way that the authors portrayed freshman year experiences, especially here in the United States. I always think that's really fascinating to read about, especially because they were very different people who went to very different schools, and so there were very different things going on in both their lives. I also really liked how open both authors were about discussing sexuality and sex and all of that stuff. That was really interesting too. The thing is, the reason why this book didn't quite work for me is because I didn't like either of the main characters very much. I couldn't really connect to either of them very well. I felt like they were a little bit too caricature for me, which is not a bad thing per se, but it just isn't something that's my personal cup of tea. But it was still enjoyable. If you're looking for something really quick to read for the summer, then maybe check this one out. I will warn you that it's very new adult.
Middle grade's kind of like my jam. That's my wheelhouse, right?
He's the middle grade expert.
I'm the middle ed. So the first one would be Hyacinth and the Secrets Beneath. So you see that giant pig.
I love that giant pig. I haven't even read it, and
I have a love-hate relationship with this book. Hyacinth moves to London from her tiny little town in America, and then because she decides to combine cold and hot water, because, you know, somehow, some way she managed to change the plumbing around because she knows how to plumb at age 11, which is awesome. And the whole magical underworld of London opens up to her, which I really like and I really love, but I have an aversion to, like, London street, well, yes. Well, see, apparently I have an aversion to London street urchins, which,
okay, then.
Stemming from the time that I watched Mary Poppins and, what's his face, Dick Van Dyke comes out, Bert, there you go, and he's like dancing around there, all of these 20 billion chimney sweeps, and I'm just like, I feel very uncomfortable right now. And there are a lot of those characters here, oddly enough. I mean, everything else is so important, and then at the center of it there are a bunch of these kind of, you know, underground Londoners, and they're kind of dirty and whatever, and then for some weird reason I'm like, I'm not connecting to this, but I like absolutely everything else. The pig is my favorite character.
Not shocking.
Ultimately, not shocking at all. So read it for the pig. My review is up for this thing, I think, I believe on Alexa's blog as well. It's cute, and again, read it for the pig, because I love this story.
I like, new tagline, read it for the pig.
Because he's awesome. Okay.
Now I get to talk about one of my favorite things that I've read in 2017, Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. The premise of this book is that the main character, Eliza, is a pretty ordinary girl in real life, but online she has a persona called Lady Constellation, and she writes one of the most popular webcomics, Monster C.
Yeah.
So, what happens in this one is a new kid goes to her school, his name is Wallace, and she finds out that he's a fanfic writer for Monster C. And they start getting closer together, and lots of things happen. And I went into this one really looking forward to it, and I didn't expect to fall head over heels in love with it. It's just such a great, I don't know, it's just such a good, relevant story for people like us who have online lives and then meet people outside of the internet.
Online life.
It's so good. It's also like a love letter to creativity and fan fiction, which I really love. I'm gonna just read you the passage that I was reading, and I'm like, it's exactly how I feel. So there's this conversation they're having about fan fiction and creating your own stuff versus the fan fiction, and she asks Wallace if he writes anything other than fan fiction. He goes, sometimes, but I don't think it's as good as my fan fiction. It's easier with fan fiction. Fan fiction is just playing with someone else's characters and settings and themes. Yeah. I don't worry if it's any good because it's fun. But when I try to write something of my own, it's just constant worry. It never seems good enough. My life, I'm just saying. I really love this book. It made me laugh. I just felt very deeply for these characters. I would kill to read Monstrosity because it sounds amazing. And yeah, one of my favorite reads. Highly underrated for 2017, I'd say, so you should definitely check it out if you haven't already.
Okay, next middle grade book, Guardians of the Griffin's Claw. Again, another semi-love-hate piece, because on the one hand, I love the whole, there is a, look at this at the back, there's like a little dossier, right? And it's from
case
the,
files, yeah.
It's case file style, it's from the US Department of Mythical Wildlife, and I'm like, ooh, cool.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, I've read it, as for those of you who are familiar with me in this channel, and I do read the approachable assassin genre, so I am marginally familiar. That's just my love letter to David Baldacci. But that's just, so I'm familiar with like government agencies that are secret that nobody knows about, and this one governs like myths and legends and secret, cool. You know. But then on the one hand, that was cool, but on the other hand, they should have played that up more. I think I'm just so used to gems like Illuminae. Where the case files are, that's what it's all about. It's all just pieced together information that tells the whole narrative. But here it jumps straight into the narrative. It even, you know, tells you, hey, you know what, we just prettied up the account of it just so it's readable. And I thought, okay, I can totally respect that. But I guess I'm just used to that. Plus it's got griffins in it. Come on, man, there's just like
Can't say no to a good griffin.
So the rest of my review is in there. I recommend it because it's a good middle grade read. The lore is solid. I don't know if I want to know what happens next. It's like, I'm good. I've read the first case file, like most government agency cover-ups. You're like, oh, you're good. Maybe I don't need another episode. But I wouldn't be averse to reading the next one. So read the rest of my review on the blog.
The next book I read was an ebook that I got for review, and it is Wicked Like a Wildfire by Lana, I'm gonna butcher his last name, Popovic, I want to say.
Popovic.
Okay, this is a bit of an odd one for me because I know already that there are going to be a ton of people who won't necessarily enjoy it. It's the story of twin sisters, Melina and Iris, and they live somewhere in Eastern Europe, I want to say, with their mother, and their whole lives they've been trying to hide their magic abilities.
Oh.
In this book, the magical abilities are in a line of women, so it runs through a line of women, and they all have to do with beauty in some form or fashion. They're called gleams in this one, so they've been hiding that for their whole lives. But when their mother is murdered, the twins have to work together to figure out what their lineage actually is, what the magic has to do with it, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. Personally, I really enjoyed it. I think it's so fascinating that it was set somewhere I've never really read about. I like the idea of the magic system in this one, and I think the way it ends is also really good. Plus, the two sisters have a very complicated relationship with each other and with their mother and some of their other friends, and I thought that was interesting too. The thing is, it's a really slow build up. There is a lot of like lingering over the setting, over the relationships. Some memories are thrown in there, and yeah, it does take a while to pick up, but once it does, it's so good. I just thought it was so interesting, and so for me personally, I really enjoyed it. I know I'm kind of the black sheep on that one because a lot of people I know haven't really clicked with it, but for me, it was pretty good. So if you want something a little bit more unusual that has that sort of magical aspect to it, definitely check that one out.
So the next one I'm reviewing is Beyond the Doors. Again, middle grade.
I love the Doors.
It's an easier read than the first two, I'd like to think.
Character named Alexa.
There's a character. It's about 4 siblings, right? And it's so cute. And it's, well, the author has a theater background, so
that's awesome. I didn't know.
So there's a lot of stuff that I could immediately connect to. Maybe that's why I could read through this faster than the first two, because those are straight up narratives. But here there's a bit of theatricality to it. The titles of each chapter begins with the name of the sibling and what they did for that chapter. For one, right? Basic story is their father falls into a coma after a freak fire accident at their house, and they have to move in with their crazy aunt Gladys, whose house is
crazy aunt.
I know, right? Whose house is this giant science experiment, and there are 20 billion unhinged.
I love crazy aunts with crazy houses,
right? And unhinged doors everywhere. So for me as a kid, I would love being taken to like the other people's houses and going, gee, I wonder what their rooms look like, because I'm a creeper that way apparently. But I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who's ever been brought to another house and was like wanted to explore and go, I wonder what their kitchen looks like, I wonder how much food they have, but that was just me. But so the secret here is that what are behind these doors, right? So I don't want to spoil that. It is extremely like it's so good and so easy to read and so fun. The characters are just amazing. But then towards the end, when things really pick up, I feel like I needed a flowchart and like a little infographic just to understand what happened.
Done one on a whiteboard.
I might though, but it's like super spoilery. But I want to do it because I'm a fan. Like I like what happened. It's just I need to reread it again to understand. Like I'm old enough to go, okay, you know what? Okay, good. Okay, good. Did it end? Okay, I get it. But I feel it was that well thought out, complicated. We'll find out when I do the infographic. But I like the endings. So easily my top of the 4. This is my number 2 pick. Because
number 2.
I know I'm saving the best for last because I am shipper trash extraordinaire.
I am a huge Rick Riordan fan. So is Macky. We love his books. Finally read The Hidden Oracle.
She
the
has
first
gotten
book
on
in the
that
Trials
train.
of Apollo. Unlike most of his other books, I didn't immediately click with this one right away.
Because it's Apollo.
It's basically about the god Apollo, and he has been turned into a human for all of the things he's done.
Yeah, what's his name? Lester Papadopoulos?
Yes, Lester Papadopoulos, that's his name.
See, this is the kind of this is the kind of middle grade that I'm used to. It's so good. It's absurd and then really deep at the same time.
Anyway, back to what I was saying. So I didn't quite click with Apollo right away. He's not one of my favorite characters. I mean, he grows on you, like...
Lester.
But it's a really fun read, and as usual, it has the trademark Riordan humor, the trademark Riordan journey story, a lot of the oh my goodness though, I will have to say that the way he weaves in the mythology in this one, I was like, what?
I know,
That was literally my reaction.
You know,
it's
so subtle. It's like, oh, by the way, amidst all of this absurdity, Lester Papadopoulos center stage, here's some lore.
It was really good, and I'm super excited for the
on.
second one. I love that I get to see some of my favorite characters. I can't say who, because it's slightly spoiler. The only 2 people I will mention are Will and Nico, because I love them. Can't really mention any, well, and Percy, of course, because Percy. Yeah, and there's a couple more people, but I won't tell you who because it's so good. Anyway, I'm super excited for the second book. Really enjoyed the first book. So glad I finally read it.
My top pick for the middle grade, the interesting thing here is I actually got a chance to talk to the author on Goodreads, which I'm so happy about. I asked her about my ship, and she totally answered me. And I get it. Like, there's no ship here. Just to be very clear.
Them, though. That's the hilarious
Painfully so. But I was able to get a really good answer. I want to say that the relationships in this book are so cute, and well, they're cute because they're children, but they're tiny humans. But it's a story about how a young girl who was raised in, just think Lara Croft, only instead of her jumping up around and like being adventurous and stuff, it was her trying to survive her crazy scientist parents' like manner. With like, I know, I'm like, yes, absolutely. I'll read about like her life, really her childhood. Like at a certain age, she realized that everything in the house is a hazard, and so she just had to figure out. And then one day, her parents are allegedly kidnapped / murdered, or we don't even know, because she gets a letter that says you have to go to France and stay with this lady for an indefinite period of time and leave the house. And from there, hijinks ensue. She meets what would eventually be one of her best friends ever in a million years, in an attempt to figure out, and this is called the Eye of the North, what her parents got into. So it's set in, like, I guess I want to say the 18th-ish century. It doesn't have a modern feel. There were no cell phones or nothing, so I really feel it was in that era. And so it's a hop, skip, and a throw away from steampunk, actually. If you actually add steampunk elements to it, it would have been like an awesome kind of steampunky kind of thing, because there's some weird flying dirigibles and all of these things. And it's such a nice read, and at the end of the day, there's such a huge heart to this book. As the author said in her intro, not everybody's first book is the book of their heart, but at the same time also a book that they really wanted to work on. But in her case, it was both, and you could really see all of the hard work that was put into this. And because I got some awesome insight into what the characters, how the characters are at the end, even if I didn't get what I wanted. It was a beautifully written story anyway, and so that's why I love Eye of the North. So Sinead O'Hart, shout out to you.
The next book I read was another ebook, and it was Pivot Point by Casey West. This is the first in a duology that is very contemporary but has a paranormal sort of science fiction twist to it. It's about a girl named Addison who has an ability that allows her to see how either of her choices will play out. She has to be the one directly related to making the choice. She can't do it for other people, so that's the limitation of it. Anyway, the choice she's faced with is one that comes after her parents' divorce, whether she's going to stay with her mom in the compound they live in or to leave with her dad to live in like the norms world, which is like our world. And we get to see like both timelines play out. It's done really well. There are common details between both timelines. There are interesting things that happen in both timelines as well, and I have a preference for sure, and I'm sure everyone who has read it does, but I'm not going to tell you which one because spoilers. It's a really good story, really compelling. I read it so fast in the matter of a couple of hours, and I'm really looking forward to reading the sequel. Okay, I have 2 more books. We're going to run through them real quick. These Things I've Done by Rebecca Phillips, about a girl named Dara. She is dealing with the grief and guilt over her best friend's death because she inadvertently played somewhat of a part in it. And it flips back and forth between the timeline when her best friend was still alive leading up to the moment her best friend dies, and the present day where she is trying to deal with all of these feelings after having left their little village, city, town, and now having come back. It's really complicated, and it gave me a lot of complicated feelings. I liked seeing how she dealt with all of these very difficult emotions. And I actually thought it was gonna go a little tropey, but thankfully it did not. I had a little bit of like a squicky feeling with the ship in this one. There is a ship in this one. I had a little bit of a squicky feeling, although that worked itself out, so that's fine. So it's really good. It's very well written. I actually quite liked how the author told this story. And the very last book is one that I'm excited to be able to talk about. It's Jane Unlimited by Kristen Cashore. The basic premise of this is that there's a girl named Jane, and she gets invited to this place called I don't know how to say it in French, Tu reviens, which means you return. And there is an incident that happens, and she has 5 different options as to what she's going to do in response to that particular moment. And we actually get to explore each of those timelines in the story, and each one is a different genre. It's very fascinating. It's an odd book, and you will always feel detached from the characters because you don't really get a chance to super get to know them, I guess. But it's so interesting. Like, it's so... again, it's one of those stories where there are common details between all of these timelines, and it's just fascinating. I really liked the different genres. It does go from like more believable to crazy weird, which I didn't mind too much. I thought it was very interesting. I definitely felt like this was more like a choose your own adventure thing, which is what it actually started as. It's good. Like, personally, I think it's really good. I think it's really clever. It's definitely very different from a lot of YA that you would read. I don't know if everyone is going to enjoy this book because, like I said, it's very odd. It's very different in structure, and not everyone is a fan of every genre, so I'm not sure how you'd feel about the different stories. But personally, I really liked it. I'm glad I finally got a chance to read it. And those were all the books that we both read in the latter half of July. If you're interested in or have more specific questions about them, you can leave that in the comments below and we will try to answer. He's a better commenter than I am, so... Anyway, we will be back soon with a book haul and another recap. But in case you missed it, we also uploaded a couple of fun videos last week. We had the anime tag, which we gushed about a lot of anime. And we have the Harry Potter collection, which has all of our HP stuff. And my personal favorite, our bookshelf tour, which is massively long.
God.
But it was a lot of fun to do, and we hope you guys enjoy it. We will see you guys for another video soon. Bye!